Hello, my name is Joanne and this is 123stitch.com. Today we're going to talk about French knots. French knots are those little bumps or dots that are sometimes used in designs for eyes, for the center of flowers, or maybe as berries or ornaments on a tree. They don't show up all that often, but when they do, they seem to cause a lot of fear or panic in stitchers because they're not the easiest thing to do. But like with anything else, if you have the right tools, the right technique, and with a little bit of practice, they become pretty easy. Today I'm going to show you how to do French knots on an Aida, on an Evenweave or linen, and then we'll also go over how to do them if they happen to be confetti or standalone stitches. Before we get started though, please go down below, click on that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming videos. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's first look at what does a French knot look like. I have a set of 3 French knots here. I'm going to zoom in so you can see them. And as you can see, they're little knots, little bumps that stick up on my fabric. And the trick is to getting them to look nice and neat each time. So a couple of things that I do is I generally work with a fairly short length of floss, unless I'm doing a whole bunch at the same time, and then it could be a little bit longer. But it's easier to twist and to hold the thread taut when it's a shorter one. I also like to use the sharp point chenille needle instead of the regular tapestry blunt tip. We're going to be piercing the threads of the fabric, and it's so much easier to do with a sharp pointed needle. The next thing I do is don't do any French knots until you're done with everything else on your design. You're completely done. Now we're going to do the French knots. The reason is we don't want to mess them up. We don't want to play around with them too much. We just want to make our knots and be done. So if you have to put, for instance, the Q-snap clamp over a French knot, that might cause a problem. So just do them when you're done stitching, and then it works out perfect. Let me zoom in here. I'm doing 2 strands of floss, and I'm going to show you how easy this is to do. First thing we do is go in the hole where we want our French knot to be. I'm going to bring my needle up, and then I need to set this down for a second so I can show you. With my non-dominant hand, I am going to hold this thread tight. And with my dominant hand, in this case my right hand, I'm going to do 3 twists on this thread here. 1, 2, 3. So I've done 3 twists on the thread. Now I'm going to put my needle back down, but I'm going to put it down in the thread right next to where I came up, while I keep this left finger holding the thread taut. So I'm putting my needle right back down into the thread next to the hole. We don't want to put it in the same hole. I don't want to put it in the next hole. I want to put it in the thread between. Keeping this thread taut, I'm going to push the needle down, and I'm going to pull it through slowly. Sometimes you have to loosen up your tension on that left hand a little bit, or the non-dominant hand a little bit, so that you can get the eye of the needle through, but then hold it tight and go as slow as you need to, and let go at the last minute. And there's your knot. That's all there is to it. You can do it using a stand. I don't usually stitch with a stand, so I'm showing you how I do it holding it. So let's do that again. We're going to bring the needle up in a hole where we want the French knot to be. We're going to grab tight close to the end here. We're going to take our needle and wrap it once, twice, 3 times, and then we're going to put our needle back down in the space in the actual thread next to the hole. Let me put that in there, and then I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I've got. Okay, so you see it's not in the hole I came up from originally, it's in the thread next to it. We're going to hold this thread taut. We're going to pull our needle through and hold tight until the last minute and complete it. There you go. So you can see the more you do them, the more they start to look the same. At first they're a little wonky. It takes a while to get the hang of it. If you want to use a stand, that may help you, especially in the beginning. Let me make another one here and see if we can do a little bit better. I'm trying to show this to you at the same time. Keep my fingers close to the end. Wrap it once, twice, 3 times. Keep my fingers as close to that end as I can. Put my needle back in the thread next to the hole. Keep holding tight and pull that through. Okay? I think the secret is to keep that tension with your non-dominant hand, or in this case my left hand, as long as you can until you have to let it go. That's what causes the nice looking knot. Do another one here. 1, 2, 3. Now I'm stitching with 2 strands of floss here. You can stitch with 1 strand of floss, you can twist twice, you can twist more times. That's going to determine the size of your knot. I usually do 2 strands of floss and 3 twists. Pull this through. You don't want to pull too hard or that knot will pull right through to the other side. There we go. All right, that's how you do those. Now let me show you how you do them on a linen or an even weave. It's actually the same thing, but. Okay, let's take a look at making French knots on an even weave or linen. This happens to be a 25 count Lugana even weave. I'm gonna zoom in here so you can see that I've already got 3 French knots, and we're gonna make another one. So I have my needle up in the hole where I want the French knot to go. I'm gonna set that down on the table, so now I have 2 hands free. I'm gonna grab close to the end. I'm gonna twist 1, 2, 3 times, and then I'm going to put my needle back in as close to the thread next to the hole as possible. Sometimes it actually goes into a hole, and that's perfectly fine. We just don't want it to come back in the same hole. There we go. Let me show that again. I'm gonna start right there. Put it down on my table, twist 1, 2, 3 times, and then put the needle back down in either the thread next to that original hole or a hole next to it. Hold tight, pull that through, and there's our French knot. It's no real difference between doing French knots on Aida or Evenweave or linen. They're all the same. Let's next look at how you actually do it on a design. I've got my 14 count Aida here again. I've got a little Christmas tree, and I'm gonna add berries to it with a single strand of floss. Single strand of floss here. I'm gonna do 1 strand for my berries. If they're standalone stitches, I tend to do them as 2 strands. If it's something like going on an already stitched area, I'll do 1 strand, but you can also just do whatever your pattern calls for. So we've got this. Now we need to start the thread without doing a knot. So I'm gonna turn this over. I'm going to go near where I want my first stitch to go. And I'm gonna weave this thread under about 5 stitches. I'm not gonna pull that all the way through. We'll leave a little tail sticking out there. And then I'm gonna go back in the same direction and go under a few more stitches. Oh, of course, I got a little knot in there, so let's get that out. There we go. All right, now you can see it's nice and tight, it's locked in place, and we're good to go. So I'm gonna put my first berry right here. I'm gonna bring my needle up through the hole, set the frame down on the table, wrap around 3 times, and then put my needle back in the thread next to the hole. Again, I'm using a chenille or sharp point needle to help me do that. Keep my thread taut, pull that through slowly, and there's my berry. Put our next one right here. twist 3 times, put the needle back in the thread next to the hole. I'm going to grab that a little closer and pull it through. It helps to have the table to hold the stand or your hoop while you're pulling that through. You really do need 2 hands. So a frame works, or you can just use the table like I'm doing, whatever surface you have. There you go. That's how you do the French knots in a design. That's how you start the thread. So that I'm just going to continue on and make berries all along here. Now the next thing I want to show you is how to make a standalone stitch. If it is all by itself, confetti standalone, I don't have a way to start my thread by weaving it under an existing thread. So I'm going to show you how to do that. To do a standalone stitch, I use 2 strands of floss. The reason I do that is I need more floss in order to be able to anchor it. And you can't do that too easily with 1 strand of floss while doing a French knot on top of it. If you're doing a cross stitch, you can do it, but it's harder on the French knot. So I've got my needle threaded with the loop method. I've got the loop on one end. I'm going to bring my needle up from the bottom. And I'm going to leave a little loop on the back. Leave that little loop and hang on to that. I'm going to bring my needle back down in the space next to my needle. Not in a hole, just the space next to it so it's as small as possible. Bring that through, and then I'm going to bring it through the loop on the back side here. Through the loop, and once I do that, it is locked in place and not going anywhere. Turn it back over. We're going to do our French knot right in that first hole again. See if I can come in just a little bit closer here for you. Right in the first hole where our first stitch went. Set that down on the table. I'm going to hold this thread taut. I'm going to twist 3 times. Now, if you feel like 3 times is too much, too bulky, because especially if your pattern called for using just 1 strand of floss, then just twist twice. Now I'm going to put my needle back down in the thread next to the hole. Don't want to put it in the hole. It'll pull the knot right through. We're going to put it right next to it. And again, I'm using my chenille or sharp pointed needle. I'm going to pull that through slowly so our knot is perfect. I'm going to turn it over, and now we have to secure this before we cut it. If you're doing a bunch of French knots around and you don't want to carry the thread, in this case, I'm not going to want to carry this red thread around because it's going to show through on the other side. Better off securing this and then starting again on the next stitch. So I'm going to hold my knot here with 1 finger. And then on this side, I'm going to take my needle under that thread. It's basically that first thread we did. We're gonna take our needle under it, and this is where the sharp pointed needle comes in really handy. Pull that through, and then I'm going to take my needle through the loop. Pull that tight, so I've got a little knot going, and then I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna do it a second time. Through a second time. I am not used to working with a sharp needle, and I keep stabbing myself. I'm going to pull that tight, and I've got my knot in there, but just to be sure, I'm going to run my needle through once this way, I'm going to weave it that way, and then I'm going to weave it in the other direction as well. Let's weave that through there, through the knot, pull that tight. Now we can trim it. It's knotted on the back, French knot on the front, and we're done. That's how you do it. Let's do it a second time so you can see that again. Okay, got my needle threaded, loop method. I'm going to start on the back side of the design and bring my needle up in the place where I want the French knot to end up. I'm going to pull this through until there's a little loop left there. Hang on to it. From the front side, bring my needle down in the thread next to the starting hole, right next to it. Go through the loop on the back, through the loop, so we're knotted, and we're good to stitch now. Now I'm going to bring my needle up through that first hole again. Sorry, I keep going out of focus here. I'm trying to keep it zoomed in so you can see what I'm doing. Set it down on the table, wind it 3 times, and then put my needle back in the thread right next to the hole. Pull my needle through while holding this taut, and there's our knot. Then we turn it over, and we're going to weave under that existing thread. Go through the loop that's left behind to knot it. We're going to do that a second time. And we're going to loop it, and then we're going to weave through the knot that was created, or the thread below it if you can still get in there. That direction, and then once in the other direction. Now I feel like it's secure. Pull that nice and tight. Trim the end. Got the knot on the back side and the French knot on the front. There you go. That's how you do the standalone stitches.
Okay, I hope that information was helpful and you feel a little bit better about doing French knots now. But if not, what I suggest you do is get a scrap piece of fabric, a needle, some thread, and just make a whole bunch of French knots until they start to look more consistent and you have a bit more confidence in them. I really appreciate you visiting with us today. If you have any questions, comments, ideas for upcoming videos, please let me know in the comments section below. I read and answer all of your comments, and I love to hear from you. While you're down there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on anything, and I will see you again soon.